13 Juni, ini sebentar lagi itu ulang tahun kedua ya. 13 Juni 2018 kita aktivitasnya lewat diskusinya lewat WhatsApp group, dan juga kalau mau kirim email boleh kirim emailnya ke hrmigas.community@gmail.com. Ini adalah logo HR Migas Community. Jadi logo bukan sembarang logo, setiap warna bahkan setiap shape-nya, setiap bentuknya itu ada artinya gitu. Bisa dibaca sendiri ya di situ ya. Yang jelas kita mau fokus ke industri energi, ke industri migas gitu. Nah, vision dan purpose-nya adalah untuk memperkuat sinergi sebetulnya di oil and gas industry. Kalau di upstream kan memang sudah ada koordinasinya sendiri gitu ya. Nah, gimana dengan teman-teman yang di downstream dan juga midstream? Di sini kita jadi lihat seluruh aktivitas oil and gas dan gimana kita bisa memberikan value dengan pengelolaan SDM untuk sebenarnya ujung-ujungnya berkontribusi kepada ketahanan energi nasional gitu. Jadi tujuannya adalah kita mau meets the industry needs, kebutuhan industri itu apa sih, terus kemudian kita bisa sharing dan diskusi HR migas issue gitu ya, ada regulasi baru, people development, best practice di sana sini gitu, bahkan best practice tentang working from home itu juga. Terus juga HR networking, dan juga kita mau empower teman-teman HR juga yang ada di members kita, dan kita juga di sini merupakan community based learning, jadi lebih less cost, apalagi dengan situasi yang saat ini kita alami gitu ya. Pasti deh yang pertama kali dipotong itu kalau misalnya ada soal potong memotong itu adalah training cost. Jadi gimana kita bisa tetap belajar ya melalui komunitas di mana kita terbentuk. Ini adalah our core team. Kita ada berdelapan, bagian di kitchen ya, bagian dapur yang masak-masak sampai ini juga bisa terjadi webinar yang ketiga ini, webinar selama kita masa pandemi ini dan selama kita working from home ya. Gitu. Jadi ada saya di sini, ada Kang Andi, juga ada Teh Nina juga ya. Di sini saya lihat tadi udah datang juga. Teman-teman bisa lihat di sini ada Erwin dari BP, ada Adi dari Inpex, Anggoro, Mbak Gesit. Cuman mungkin nggak semuanya bisa hadir, dan juga ada Mbak Indira. Oke. Terus kemudian ini adalah members kita. Sampai saat ini udah 90 sih sebenarnya. Udah 90, ada yang dari upstream, lebih banyak ya dominasinya dari upstream. Terus bentar, ini kenapa macet? Dari upstream lebih banyak, terus kemudian ada juga yang dari geothermal, ada dari government. Nah, kalau dilihat juga kita ada beberapa teman-teman dari konsultan dan yang lainnya gitu, dari PCU, dari Deloitte. Kok mereka bisa masuk gitu? Karena mereka sebelumnya kerja di oil and gas company, terus kemudian keluar, ya sudahlah kita tetap ada di sini sama-sama, kan sama-sama belajar juga gitu ya. Nah, yang udah kita lakukan so far adalah sharing dan learning session. Kita juga giving back ke kampus, biasanya diminta untuk career talks, terus change management workshop untuk Dijen Migas. Waktu itu kita fasilitasi dan kolaborasi dengan beberapa komunitas, dengan Hagi, Diaspora, juga dengan Joint Convention Jogja Committee. Jadi kalau di sini ada beberapa teman-teman yang jadi komite di situ ya, ini adalah hasil kerjasama kita ya, dulu ya, networknya tersambung gitu. Ini kegiatan kita tahun 2018, lumayan banyak juga ya. Terus kemudian 2019 kita juga manage untuk mengadakan kegiatan, dan di 2020 ini sebenarnya ada kegiatan ya, kegiatan kita adalah webinar ini gitu. Dan hari ini kita berkesempatan untuk mengundang speakers dari UK gitu ya. So, thank you, itu aja perkenalannya. Silahkan di follow Instagramnya, tadi Kang Andi juga udah mention. Oke, stop share ya. Oke, so thank you semuanya.
Baik, buat rekan-rekan, mungkin nanti bisa juga sebelum lanjut membahas Juli, welcome to Masud also to this webinar. We have and the registration is 57 participants, and until now only half just joined. We can continue for the session, and then we will record the session, and then we will summarize it for you, and then you can find it through the HR Migas community Instagram or to partnering.id Instagram. And also this today workshop will be live on YouTube on partnering, point by partnering. There's a live YouTube there. If you cannot join or you want to share it with your friend, I will share the link in the chat below. Okay, Mbak Julie, you can continue for the product. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kak Andi. So, alright, webinar kita pada sore hari ini menjelang jam berbuka puasa nanti ya akan dipandu, akan dimoderasi oleh Frisa Sukirno. Frisa boleh dibuka mungkin videonya. Saya akan memperkenalkan Frisa. So, Frisa Sukirno saat ini adalah VP HR of Total Downstream, ya. Graduated from University of East London.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Frisa. She graduated from University of East London. So her English are amazing lah, ya. Spend so much of her time outside the Indonesia, ya, Frisa. 17 years of HR experience, previously managing HR in GlaxoSmithKline and also Abbott and many more companies. So without further ado, over to you, Frisa. Silakan.
Yes. Hello, selamat sore, teman-teman. So, hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to this webinar. Good morning to Angus and Masood as well. Welcome. I'm very happy to be here with all of you today. So, as we all know, this COVID-19 pandemic is impacting all of us like never before, and it has severely impacted the way we conduct our day-to-day activities at the office. So of course, particularly for HR professionals, it has significantly put at the forefront what it means for us in terms of the company, in terms of the way we do our work, our way of working, but also what it means for employees as well as for fresh graduates as well. So I think what we're going to do today is to have a very lively discussion about what it means, especially in terms of career management, which is also a very, very important part of what HR practitioners are doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a presentation first by Angus as well as Masood. It will last for about 1 hour. And then after that presentation, we're going to have a question and answer session at the end. So after about 1 hour, we will spend about half an hour for the Q&A. So I would encourage everyone, please, this is a good opportunity for us to tap into the wealth of knowledge and experience that our speakers have and to understand a bit more, of course. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask at the end of the session, of the end of the presentation session. But if any time you have any questions, I would encourage you to type in the chat box, and then we will discuss it at the end. Because there are so many participants, could I please kindly ask everyone to put yourselves on mute? And then at the end, after the presentation, we can then unmute ourselves if there's any questions, okay? So I'm very excited. Without further ado, please, let's give a warm welcome to Angus and Masood. You guys, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to check that you can hear me okay?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm on. Thank you. And thank you for that introduction. If you could get the slideshow up, please, Andy. Okay, great. And let's get straight to it. I'll introduce ourselves in just one moment, but let's get straight to it. I'd like you to forward the slide, please, Andy.
Angus, can you turn on your camera, please? Thank you.
Yes, I can. We thought we wouldn't do that actually in case there were bandwidth problems, but I'm happy to turn it on. It's up to you guys.
No problem with bandwidth. All of us
Okay.
are. So if the speakers are on, yeah, thank you.
Okay, there you are. I am a real person. Hello, everyone. So let's have a look at this slide first. This is a slide showing us oil tankers around the world. It was a satellite image that was taken just a week or two ago, and each red dot here is an oil tanker. And what's interesting about this is that all these oil tankers are full of crude oil, but they have nowhere to go. They're literally idle. And so this is a very graphic illustration of the crisis that the energy sector has been living through, and you and I have been living through these last few weeks. We've seen storage and tankers full up with oil. We've seen tanker rates go up. We've seen collapsing oil prices and gas prices. We've seen companies announce big cuts to their spending. So when we look at this situation, the natural question to ask is, well, what does this mean for me? What does it mean for us? How should we respond to this? And that's really what we're talking about today. I think in times of crisis, it's true to say that the need for communication goes up, the need for community goes up. So I really appreciate and value what you're doing at HR MIGAS community, bringing everyone together so that we can share experiences and share understanding of what's going on in the world. Because what we know is that there is tremendous amount of change in the world at the moment. And the people that do well, the winners, the people that come out on top, will be those that have a good career plan. So the people that have a really structured approach to the way they deal with their career, they have a strategic approach, they have a plan which they implement. These are the people that will be the winners. Okay, next slide, please, Andy. Okay, so just to introduce ourselves, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Angus Warren. I am the Managing Director of WBC, which is a specialist energy sector training company. We help people and organizations develop their capabilities in leadership, management, and business in the energy sector. One small example of how we're responding to the crisis, we used to be very much focused on classroom-based training programs, which we still do, of course, but now we're introducing virtual programs, and this webinar is an example of some of the virtual work that we're doing. I'd like to also introduce Masood Golshani Shirazi. Masood is an associate of WBC. He has over 30 years experience in HR and executive positions in many sectors, including the energy sector, and has worked for companies like Vodafone and Coca-Cola in the past. Let's have a quick look at the agenda. It's really in three parts. So Masood will start off with a look at the macro impact of the pandemic. I will then take a look at the future of the energy sector and what's happening in the energy sector right now. And then the main part of the presentation is actually back to Masood, where we'll give you some ideas on career management and career planning. And we'll use the 4P structure. So any of you that have studied marketing or been involved with marketing might have come across this idea of 4Ps. The 4Ps are the product, the price, the place, and promotion. So this is the tool that we'll suggest to you for structuring, for formatting your career development plans. Okay, as Frieza said, it will take just somewhat short of an hour so that we have plenty of time for questions at the end, and we'd be delighted to take your questions at the end and get a good discussion going. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please, and over to Masood.
Thank you very much, Angus. Well, it's very interesting, and I'm really proud to be speaking to you because as HR practitioners, of course, some of the material may well be interesting for you individually, but clearly we also have a duty to the people around us, to the people who rely on us, and hopefully this is something that will be of benefit to you to pass on to your clients and your colleagues going forward. In my early HR career, I was forever trying to create a scientific way of making all our decisions, especially about Korea, more fair. I spent years doing assessment centers and detailed competency evaluation, and always tried very much to make the real world fair, as opposed to really make our talent ready for the real world. And the approach that I'm going to talk to you about is more that you know, there is this reality in the world. Let's get ready for it, as opposed to try to continuously be unrealistic about some of the changes I was trying to make. Of course, we should always try to make the system fairer and better. We all do that all the time. We can't do that at the expense of the reality. So what's the reality we're facing now? Can we go to the next slide, please? Well, we are in a situation that is unprecedented. We can all think back 5-6 months ago and look at our world and say, who predicted where we were going to be? Very few people. Basically, no one thought that this pandemic would start and we would be here. So this level of uncertainty that we currently are facing is really affecting everyone. We're all in it together. This curve, which some of you would have come across because this is a very common model, it's called the change curve. And it's the emotional journey that we go through when we come up with a degree of uncertainty around us. So you might have heard some of these terms before. First, you know, you start denying that, no, it's not going to happen. You become anxious, you become, you go into shock. Then your fear starts, oh my God, what about my future? What about my plans? Then anger, and you know, looking for blame, frustration, confusion, and it becomes very stressful. And your emotions reduce your energy until a point where, you know, you accept, you get into a situation where, you know, this is our new reality. We get used to it, and then you start rising back up to face into the new reality. Angus talked about winners and losers. The classic view is the winners are the ones where this curve is shallower, where you come out ahead of others with the acceptance of the new situation and a will and energy to do something about it. Now, this curve that we're going through is a curve that individuals go through, teams go through, companies go through, and you can actually see governments going through this. So this idea that we're all in it together is right the way through here. And the question is, what do people need in order to go through this curve in a much more shallow way and quicker way to be part of the 5-10% winners that come out the other end? And what they need, especially at the beginning part of this curve, is good quality information. They need to understand what is my reality rather than what I hope or what I believe to be true. And they also need a community. You need to feel that you are in a supported group. You need communication. You need the things like you're doing today. I mean, I agree completely with what Angus said. I think the more communication at this point, the better. Even if we have a communication that says, look, we don't know what's going on yet, that's better than silence. Because this is what happens, especially in organizations, and you guys in HR will know this better than anyone. If you leave the communication channels quiet, somebody will fill it with their version. And their version of whatever it is that's going on is going to be far, far worse because they want a sensational element. So especially for, as HR practitioners, you know that what they call the grapevine, Corridor FM, whatever it is, will come up with the most outlandish versions of reality and fill that into all the communication channels, especially with the key influencers that you have there that may not all, be the most senior managers. And motivation will go down even further, right the way down at the bottom. So facts, checking the reality again and again, communicating all the time, because that whole sense of we're in it together and we're going to come out of it together with a bright vision for the future is how you shallow this curve and you become a winner rather than a victim of what's happened. Now, let's talk about what's happening. Can I have the next slide, please? There's a lot being said right now about all the big things that are going on that are unprecedented. Well, I think an awful lot of what's going on was already going to happen. There was a lot of trends that we were witnessing for years and years and years. But what's happened is these have been accelerated. The move towards digitalization of work, right the way across, from automation to data warehousing to CRM to whatever, to the interaction that we have with each other, the way we deal with information, that is going at an unprecedented rate. There is an awful lot of people who are cutting costs, but this is not an area they're cutting. This is an area they're accelerating. Second, e-commerce. Again, buying online, getting deliveries online, all the online businesses, whether it's online banking or whether it's doing all the governmental services online, everything's gonna go online. And a lot of people, I mean, it's never gonna go back. Let's put it this way. This trend and the acceleration that's happening is having a massive impact. Globalization. Indonesia is a very connected country. I've been to Indonesia, loved Indonesia, and all multiple different places there. It's very mixed, cosmopolitan, lots of different elements, lots of connection with the world. I don't think globalization is going to stop, but this way of doing business, and especially the global focus on China, may not continue in isolation. Actually, Indonesia might end up being one of the winners in that situation as a location for sourcing material, as a location to getting things done cheaper and high quality. Same as Vietnam, same as other places, there will be multiple sources for things as opposed to the over-reliance on China, the way things have gone. Plus, there's a lot of movement on the supply chain side on globalization of looking for local material, local produce. And of course, this doesn't affect the oil industry and the gas industry, because of course those are local where they are, where the source of the energy is. But it certainly does affect some of the other elements going on. As HR professionals, we've all been talking about flexible working and flexible contracts. You know that this whole idea of flexible working has been something HR has been promoting to create well-being and to create engagement with our workforce. There's been a reluctance, in my experience, in the last 34 years of trying to do this in multiple different countries, from the line managers who want to have their employees right there. So I can go out of my room, call someone, talk to them right there, see them in the corridor, remember that I wanted something from them or I needed something, and have that conversation. And there's a huge value in that. And the flexible element means you can't have it always like that. And this idea of flexible working is now accelerated because of the lockdown, because of what people are experiencing, but also because people realized, actually, I don't need everyone in the office all the time. There's an awful lot of organizations now that are saying to people, even when the lockdown is over, feel free to work from home, or feel free to work from home a couple of days per week. The same thing with contracts. A lot of companies, especially in markets such as Indonesia and other places that I've heard, certainly United States, are feeling that, in the current situation, maybe we should create a flexible workforce. Therefore, the contracts need to be maybe more fixed, maybe some outsourcing, maybe some element of flexibility to the kind of workforce we want to have, so that we could flex it for the good times, the bad times, the peaks and the troughs. And again, in HR, this is not new. This is something we've been doing for decades. And sustainability. Companies paying attention to what is important to public relations, to the community, to be green, to be sustainable. This is, again, not new. And definitely for the energy sector, this is incredibly important for their public relations and for how people perceive oil and gas. And that has accelerated. And that's never going to go back. It is incredibly important that we prepare the organizations for these trends. There might be other trends that I haven't mentioned here. Certainly, I know that there's a massive trend, especially in places like Indonesia, of urbanization, of people moving into the cities, the growth in developing markets, such as Indonesia, in comparison to other countries in the world. Those trends are also accelerating. I haven't mentioned all the trends here. I'm sure you will know an awful lot more in your own local community. It's just that it's not all new. Can I have the next slide, please? Hello? Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. What is new is the impact of what's happening. Now, for the purpose of this presentation, I've taken worst case scenario because my philosophy always is prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So looking at, as it says below, think tanks, futurists, big organizations that do a lot of analysis, like Bain, McKinsey, Economist Intelligence Unit, and others. We've looked at, Angus and I, at really what are they predicting? Because no one knows. Let's be honest here. Everyone is making educated guesses. But the worst case scenario is that we're looking at a global economic recession. We're looking at something that lasts more than a few quarters. When you hear companies like British Airways laying off 12,000 people, it basically says to you that they've looked at their industry. They don't believe this is a downturn for 1 or 2 quarters. They believe this is a downturn for multiple years. Because you as HR people will know the cost of making redundancies and the cost of rehiring means that it's not worth getting rid of that number of people if it's just for 2 or 3 months or maybe up to 6 months. But if the downturn is for years, then you say, okay, it makes economic sense. So there is unemployment. It's not uniform. It's not across every country in the same way or every industry, but there is massive unemployment. And when it happens in mass unemployment, the way it's happening in America, for example, it affects everyone. Debt, there's still costs, but the income's gone down. Debt is going up. We're not talking about multi-generational debt. We're talking about countries having debt that are multiple their GDP for years. And that's okay, as long as you're able to sustain it, as long as you're able to service that debt. And hopefully, we're still at the stage where that debt is manageable. But what that means is assets are becoming cheap because people aren't spending money to buy new assets, at least not yet. If you remember the curve that we looked at the beginning part of that curve, people go into shock, and we'll talk about that when we talk about what companies do. So the assets, the investments aren't coming through, so cash is king at the moment. Industry by industry, things are very different. Retail, for example, if people are not able to go into the shops unless the retail chain has an online version, they're suffering very badly. Restaurants, bars, hospitality, tourism. I mean, I don't know how people are faring in the tourist sector in Indonesia, but I'm guessing not very well. Those massive hotels in Bali, all those fantastic locations. How are they doing? Not great, I guess. And then there are some winners. We talked about online delivery, Amazon, unprecedented level of profitability. I think the owner of Amazon is now $24 billion richer just in the last few months because of what's happened. So there are a huge amount of disparity in the industries, and some of those industries will come back very quickly. Some of them will take years, some of them may never come back. So the travel industry, they're talking about coming back, but in 3 years, 2 to 3 years, for example. Other industries, I guess the food industry would come back much faster. Although they're talking about, for example, even when the lockdown is loosened, people's trust in each other and in being very much present in the community might be affected, and it might take a long time for people to go into crowded places again. So again, we got to watch this in what's happening with that, and society. Part of that discussion about the curve was that when you're going through stress and uncertainty, you need support, and therefore your local community becomes far more important to you. You want to shop locally because you want to support that local shop rather than go to the big supermarket. You want to be with your neighbors, you want to be with your friends, you want to be helpful to them because that's your support network. The online groups is exactly the same. It doesn't mean that it's always physical. There would be groups like this in terms of HR community, supporting each other, helping each other, and you know, really looking at how you as a group help each other is wonderful. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. There are multiple other online groups that you would have. And this creates new tribes. And those tribes would last this situation and would be new communities that you could tap into for talent, you could tap into for solutions all the time, all the time. Now, politically, the governments around the world have had to try and take charge of this situation badly. Well, I think, like we said, they all went into shock in the same way and are dealing with it in the same curve. But they're being more interventionist, far more. There are new rules, new regulations, new financial incentives, and this will continue because the aftermath, which will take years, will also require that level of intervention. There will be impact on the spending. At the same time, there'll need to be interventions on the tax side. The stimulus that the economy needs, support for particular industries, positions they might take that helps them bring the community with them. Because let's be honest, these are politicians. They are going to want to carry the public support, and the public view of what's happening and how it's happening might require some nationalization, might require some regulation on sustainability, on environment. Now, these are some, again, of the things that we've picked up that are impacts. Of course, every one of us will see impacts all over the place, and we don't have, Angus and I, a monopoly on what we've seen, but these are the big ticket items that I picked up. Add to this local issues. Local issues, whether it's to a country like in United Kingdom, we have the fact that we'll be leaving the European community at the end of the year, which will have a multiplier effect. In Indonesia, I'm sure there's multiple impacts that are being felt locally and go through this, and of course within the oil industry. Let me just say, in order to accelerate through the denial phase, as the questions come up, I'll just deal with it. You need to continuously check perceptions versus reality. Good quality information, information from multiple different sources, information that's shared in an environment where you feel that you're part of, you know, we're all in it together kind of thing, helps people move past denial and shock and anger into acceptance. Information and community, those are the answers. The environment, especially for oil industry, is going to be incredibly important, and for gas. So again, these are our realities. I'd like to hand over now to Angus to talk about the oil industry specifically and the energy sector a little bit, and then we'll go back to say, okay, what are we going to do about it What do we see happening within companies? And then how do we make sure we're part of the winners by a proper career plan? Angus. Angus, hello?
Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. All right, to set the scene with the energy sector, then I think in the current crisis, it's easy to forget that actually the industry is going through tremendous change, and there's some really interesting challenges that are presented in the industry. And I think the neatest way of looking at this is to consider the energy trilemma. You might have come across this. And these are the three big challenges that face the industry. And we talk about the energy trilemma as being energy security, energy affordability, and energy sustainability. And so energy security is the ability to provide sufficient quantities of energy to the world to meet demand, particularly in growing economies in developing countries. Energy affordability is all about producing energy that people are willing to pay for at a price that people are willing to pay for, at a price that people can afford. And then energy sustainability, of course, is the idea, and it's not unique to the energy sector, this idea that what we do needs to be sustainable. So within the energy sector, there's big debates around climate change, of course, and also city pollution. Whatever we do needs to be in a sustainable manner. So we think about the energy trilemma. And what's interesting to me is that although we're going through a crisis right now, this energy trilemma will still be very present. It will still be the challenge that needs to be solved for the industry in the long term. A very interesting challenge, and it's a challenge that is going to provide people, you, myself, and others with very long and interesting careers. So energy is still relevant. It's a very relevant sector, despite the short-term pain that we're going through. Next slide, please. Okay, but obviously we do see some short-term issues. Obviously, there's things going on in the world that are difficult for the energy sector. And just to look back a few short weeks, it was really precipitated by two big events, which caused, if you will, a perfect storm. We first of all had the breakdown of OPEC Plus, which is Saudi and Russia, increasing their production of oil, bringing increased supplies of oil into the marketplace. And we also had, in combination, collapsing demand due to COVID-19. So demand for oil and gas has been collapsing due to the restrictions that governments have been bringing in place. So, for example, lockdown. And nowhere is this more true than the transportation sector, where we've seen transportation in the form of planes or trains or cars severely restricted. And therefore, of course, that means that the demand for oil and gas will go down in the short term. And that has meant that oil markets are in crisis. I use the word crisis advisedly. I don't think it's a stretch to use the word. Markets have been in crisis, and we had the really unusual, in fact, unique scenario 2 weeks ago where WTI, which is the crude oil traded in America, actually was trading at a negative price for oil. And this was really a circumstance, a coincidence of an expiring futures contract and a shortage of storage space. But whatever the exact causes of this, it's unique. Never has that happened before. Negative oil prices. And of course, oil and gas companies have been responding to this. And I'm sure you've seen this where you're working, that many companies have announced deep cuts in spending. And many governments in oil-rich countries are under significant strain. So countries which rely on oil and gas revenues for a significant part of their government spending are really feeling the pinch right now, a very difficult time for them. And then, of course, there are questions, the longer term questions. Well, what does all this mean for the energy transition? And I'm posing the question here. I don't have the answer, but we can certainly think about some of the things that will help us to answer that question. And broadly, there's two schools of thought. The first is that lower oil and gas prices will make oil and gas more competitive. And that means that oil and gas the transition will be slowed and oil and gas will be more dominant. Other people say, well, oil and gas will find it much more difficult to attract resources in the future because the sector is much less profitable currently. And so it will be much more difficult, for example, to get finance and to get the people that you need into the sector to do the work. Okay, next slide, please. So what is the typical oil and gas company response to a downturn? And I mentioned this to you because I've lived through several of these now. I remember the one we had in 1998. There was a brief one in the 2008-2009 timeframe around the financial crisis. Of course, we had one in 2015-2016, and now in 2020 we have another one. So much of what oil and gas companies do in a downturn is very predictable. So for those that have not lived through this, you may be looking around in the world and seeing things going on, and it all looks a little bit chaotic, a little bit uncertain, and quite dramatic. But let me reassure you that this is the usual response for the oil and gas sector. Essentially what happens is when your price of oil and gas goes down, your company revenues go down, and that means your cash flow goes down, and that means your finances are not as strong. So you have to take some action. And what oil and gas companies tend to do is, the first thing they do is reschedule their financing. So they cut dividends. In fact, you might have seen Shell announced that its first dividend cut since the Second World War, so over 70 years, its first dividend cut recently. They will spend a lot less money on projects, and they'll try to refinance their debt if at all possible. And when we speak about reducing capital expenditures, so the money that you're investing in projects, this can be quite dramatic, at least in the short term. So typically what we see happening is the big projects either get deferred or cancelled altogether. Companies will invest in smaller projects that pay back much more quickly. And some activities may be stopped altogether. So many companies will either cut exploration or even stop it for a period. And of course, any remaining activity, the base activity of your company, will have to be much more efficient. So costs will be taken out and activities will have to be much more efficient. Now this is, I know that many folks on the call today are working in the oil services sector. Now this is going to be a challenge for us because the oil services sector has only just recently recovered from the last downturn in 2015-2016. And so there's not, my feeling is there's not a lot of scope, not a lot of opportunity to cut costs in oil services today. The oil services sector is much lower margins than it was in the last downturn in 2015-2016, and the companies are much the financial strength of the company is much lower. So I think we need to be careful there. But a very, very similar response to the downturn that we're seeing from the sector. I would say this time around, perhaps compared to others, the reductions have been much quicker. The cuts to spending have been much quicker. So the reaction has been very quick, which actually is a good thing. That means that we can recover much more quickly. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so if those are the short-term sort of impediments, the short-term needs, what about the longer term? I mean, obviously, over the very short term, everything's being driven by geopolitics and COVID-19, but that will come to an end. And then we need to start thinking about the long term. And then the good news is, the good news for the energy sector is that over the long term, population increases and rising living standards will drive growth in the sector. We know this from history. This is very well known. It's not controversial. We've seen it happen many times. As the population increases, as economies get bigger, as living standards rise, that this will drive growth in the need for energy. And I'm confident that the oil and gas sector will continue to be a big part of the energy sector for many, many years to come. So there will be careers to be made, there'll be business opportunities in much the same way as there has been in the past. But of course, renewables will have a bigger share of the energy pie. Renewables market share is set to continue increasing. It will have a bigger share of the energy pie, but don't forget that pie is getting bigger, so energy is growing. And there is still a really exciting opportunity for oil and gas in the transition itself. So you might have heard of some of the initiatives that are being adopted now. I'm thinking here of things like net zero emissions that many oil companies have set targets around. There's the concept of blue hydrogen derived from oil and gas. There's carbon capture and storage. There are a whole range of initiatives underway and a whole range of opportunities that will mean that oil and gas has a very exciting role in the transition as well. And so, as I hint, this is really providing some very exciting opportunities for us in the sector over the long term, the medium to long term. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for developing your careers and developing businesses within the sector. But how do we go about making sure we're a winner? How do we go about making sure that with all this change, we have a career plan that will help us be one of the winners? So with that, I'd like to hand back to Masood to explain just how we can do that.
Thank you, Angus. Thank you very much. Look, we all understand that working in companies, we're all feeling what's the natural reaction that those companies will have. Let's just, can I have the next slide, please? In these companies, again, the reaction could often be very short-term thinking. That, okay, let's immediately reduce some of our costs. The cash has stopped coming into the business. We are feeling the pinch, and as such, let's get rid of anyone that is not absolutely core and essential to what we want to go. And as HR people, that this is not always a very perfect method for doing that. How much fat are we cutting? How much muscle we're cutting is often a question that hurts companies longer term. But this is a knee-jerk, as we say in Britain, reaction. Because you're making people redundant, oh, let's stop all hiring. If we've got people in mind, let's defer them starting. Let's just see what happens. Let's not take any risks. So the risk aversion, the movement away. So, oh my God, we desperately need someone. Yes, but bring in an expert. I don't want to take any chances on bringing someone who will grow into the job. No, we want the expert. So all this plus, oh, let's put them on a short-term contract because we don't know what the future will bring. So I want to make sure that I might manage that risk and bring them on a short-term contract. And then if it all works out, we'll offer them a full employment afterwards. The amount of training that might be happening will be essential technical training. So the investment we're making in people will be going down. And by the way, when we want to make selection decisions, we want to reduce risk again. So let's bring someone internally, someone we know, someone that we can trust, rather than take any risks on new people coming in. Now, this is just a range of things. Again, and we will do this again and again. In the current situation, I want you to go back and think about this as a reaction to that change curve. This is not about accepting our new reality or understanding even what that new reality is. This is a knee-jerk reaction. Normally, this would last about 2-3 months, maybe for some companies, 6 months. Then the next phase kicks in. Can I have the next slide, please? The next phase is, okay, now we have a view about what we think is going to happen. Oh my God. So if there's going to be change, we're going to need some new capability. We're going to need to adjust our operating model. And those new skills, whether it's online, whether it's digital transformation, internal capability building in those areas, we're going to need those people. And because of the flexible working model that we want to go through, you know, we want to have some of those people brought in and locked in, some of those people on a temporary basis. Again, this is the role of HR. You guys will be working on this right the way through. And then the digitalization that we talked about, the online, is going to develop into new ways of recruiting and developing people. A large country like Indonesia with a massive population, all that talent, how do you streamline it? How do you put them through the stages of selection to make sure you get the best, but dealing with those volumes? It's going to mean a lot more automation. And that automation will continue in how you develop people. We are doing online discussion now, online training right now. I don't think the face-to-face will stop. I don't think it will. I think there's always a usefulness for that. But the amount of training that might happen online or digitally or through what we're going through right now will be far more than it was before this pandemic started. You're bringing in some key people. Those key people need to be retained. Again, when we talk about this, who are those people? Those are people that are the best for helping us deal with our new reality and the new needs of our business going forward. So who is the key talent might change. And we need to think about that. You know, how do we put our talent into various pools? This is the talent for long term, for the future leadership of the organization. This is technical talent. This is talent that has a particular skill set that is important for us going through. So creating those pools is significantly more important now because those will be in demand and you will have a retention risk. And how do you manage that retention risk? Of course, the first thing is pay differentials. We talked about winners and losers. People who've got the skills necessary for the future will be in short supply. Because they're in short supply, they'll be able to demand more money because they'll have more options. When I talk about pay differential here, it's not talking about senior management to the juniors necessarily. It's talking about those talent pools. It's talking about how much those talent pools need to be retained. And of course, we're not going to be able to retain them just with money. They're going to need to be kept interested, kept engaged, kept being promoted. So there's a whole career development element to this, the succession planning that we need to put in place to retain that talent, the whole element of coaching to make sure they become the right type of future leader, future talent that we want to go through. That's going to be really, really important. And this brings me down to the leadership. Now, as the world is getting more complex and our business is getting more complex, yours is no different. Both your country, your region, and the industry you're in, as Angus just showed, as the discussion we were having, are going to become so much more complex. Leaders that are able to deal with that complexity, deal with the uncertainty, deal with potential conflict of different options are not out there in large numbers. In fact, quality of leadership is going to become one of the most scarce resources that we have. It's going to become absolutely paramount to the success of your businesses and to the success of those individuals. The days where someone could bluff their way because of who they knew, how they operated in a acceptable way, and they look right and said the right things, are going to be over for most people. The real leaders that are able to bring the team together, align them to deliver really complex, difficult challenges, are going to shine through. And I'm really happy about that. I'm very happy that finally the really good leaders will shine through. I'm really worried that there are not that many of them out there. So, you know, that's one of the key changes. And I think inspirational leadership, people who are able to communicate effectively, these are skills that will be in greater demand, as well as team leadership and team working. For your companies, the other thing that's going to become more and more important is your employer brand, and your company brand in general. You're already seeing that there's a lot of companies that are adjusting to this new reality. For example, Amazon, having found their fantastic fortune in what's happening in this, doesn't want any jealousy, doesn't want any negativity. Therefore, they've increased the pay to their employees. Therefore, they're offering free things to their customers, so that, you know, you feel that you're sharing some of the base benefits that you have out there. So corporate social responsibility that often sits within HR is going to become really, really, really important going forward. Is not going to go away. And within the oil and gas industry, that's doubly so. I worked in Coca-Cola as vice president for many, many years. Again, those kinds of businesses feel that already. There was a whole trend that, you know, what the tobacco industry was going through, which I know you in Indonesia is a massive market, is going to be felt through right the way through. And some of those lessons and the way they operated would need to be adopted for sugar drinks, and oil and gas industry is no different to that. Okay, so again, this is just some of my thinking on the short and long-term reaction of companies, because those are companies where, of course, demand will come to us and we'll need to adjust ourselves to deal with these things. A lot of these things are already trends. Again, as we said, the online recruitment, the talent pooling, the succession planning. For me, the critical thing here is that we will need to do more than pay lip service. They need to be done well. We all do succession plans, you know, names in boxes. But how you keep those people really engaged, how you give them visibility, how you bring them on so that they're ready for when the position comes up, rather than just being someone's pet's favorite individual that they put into a box. There is a lot of finesse. There's a lot of skill in how we do things in HR that is going to be really significant going forward. Okay, let's talk about the core of what we want to talk about in this presentation, which is how do you manage your career doing this? Now, in the context of you guys as HR professionals, as I said at the beginning, this is doubly important. We all have to practice what we preach. So myself, Angus, you, this is for us. This is something that we should all be using. And the reason we should be using it is because as the situation becomes more difficult out in the job market, for example, job market, whether it's internal to the company or external, because this is doubly true if it's internal to the company as well, we need to do our career management better to be part of the winners. And those people that differentiate themselves, that show themselves to be ready for the new world that's coming and position themselves right, will be part of the 5%, 10% that'll be winners, as opposed to being hurt by what's happening. Secondly, as HR professionals, this is a model that you could use for your talent within the organization to really create that success for them, which we were talking about, so that they're not just put on names on boxes, but that actually is delivered into reality. The early part of my career, as I said, I was heavily involved in job analysis, competency development, technical and behavioral, and assessment centers. I'm talking about designing and running assessment centers that were 5 days, 6 days to make sure the right person got the job. And my belief that those things are necessary, certainly not 5-day assessment centers anymore, but assessment as a whole, has not gone away, but has become balanced. That there is a reality in this world that to become, for example, a senior executive without understanding how to do some of the things we talk about is not realistic. The political navigation of a company, the understanding how the relationships are working are important in getting things done. Understanding some of the things we talked about how to promote yourself is a necessary skill that sits alongside the competence. Okay, so the 4 Ps. As Angus said, this is a marketing approach, a very old marketing approach, and it starts with you supposing yourself to be a product. So let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so you as a product, how would you describe this product? What does this product do? The first thing is you can't decide this unless you have the right information. And that's about self-awareness. We all have perceptions about what we are like. A lot of those perceptions have come through how we see ourselves through other people's eyes. Who are those people? Are those people really trustworthy? Do they have our best interest at heart? Will they tell us the truth? Have I changed recently? Have I grown into... So self-awareness is key. And staying informed, exactly what is this product? What does it that it do? And how has this product developed over time? So when I was young, when I first started this company, when I first started at work, this is what I was like, and how am I now? And this you can look at in terms of your qualification and technical capability. So we have templates for all this, of course, to help people do this, which we can't talk about right now, but I mean, this is part of what I do. We have 3 to 4 maximum technical capabilities and qualifications that define us as a product. 3 or 4 key experiences and that prove what the sector, what we do, all of those things, the kind of jobs we've done, the kind of challenges we've met and succeeded. And then personal. What am I like as my characteristic, in my beliefs, in my system, how I behave? Again, the critical things that make us different. If you put those things together, the technical, the situational, experiential, and the behavioral, personal, you can package that as a product. You can say, again, to use an analogy, I'm a screwdriver. I'm really good where you need a screw to be put in, or I'm a hammer, and I'm very good where there's a nail that needs to be put down. We all have range, of course. We all have a lot of different things we can be. Again, this is really important that you concentrate on what makes you the best of what you are, the best of this product. Now, having done that, being very clear about it, you then need proof points. How can I prove this? Somebody says, oh yeah, so how do I know that's true? The best proof points are factual, number-based, if you can, and as recent and as relevant to the position that you're talking about or where you want to go as possible. Again, the reason we're talking about these things is because you could prepare this stuff in advance. You could say, this is the product that I have, and these are the proof points for each one of those key USPs. Now, I would have no more than 3, 4 for each example, no fewer than 2, to illustrate the power and quality of your product. Next is stretch capability. Okay, this is what I've done in my last job, or this is what you know about me in this company, But did you also know that I'm capable of doing this, 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 this? And here's the example. That's when you're saying this product can also be used in this market. This product can also be used in this kind of job. It can solve this kind of problem. And this is the skill that I already have, but maybe I haven't been allowed to prove yet. So if you can imagine that your product is a circle in the middle, the core, and then this is the next circle around it, which is the stretch. Then there is the point number 5. This is my potential. This is what I know I'll be good at. I haven't had a chance to try it yet. I don't have any proof points yet. But if I was given the right training, if I develop myself in that way, this is my potential. That's the 3rd circle that goes around that product. There is a 4th element to this, which is what 100% I'm not. Because again, that's really important to identify. You know, this product is the core, the stretch, and the potential, and it clearly isn't this. You know, I am not a cost accountant. I never will be. It's not what I'm good at. It's not what I have an interest in. It's not me. However, I could be a historian. I mean, I don't know. It's an example, but it's what we're talking about. And the last point is, what's the packaging of this product? How is this product perceived? Now, you know that people make decisions based on perception more than on fact, far more. That's why brands work. People make a selection about a product versus another on an idea of a perceived quality, a perceived value that they're getting. That's the brand. So what's your brand? How do people check what their brand is? Again, let's go back to the beginning. You have to check because your perception may not be right. You may think this is my brand, but we all have to check again and again. How do you check? You talk to people you trust. You have a community. You have a support network that you trust, that you check. How am I coming across? What is my brand? Then you decide, how do I want my brand to be? When you visualize yourself in your future success, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, what do you see? What is that version of yourself and what's that brand? And then you've got the gap. This is where I'm now in terms of how I'm perceived and my product is perceived. And this is how I want to be perceived. And then you have options to improve your perception by changing how people feel when they interact with your product, so that their perception of your brand changes over time. Now, you may look at particular qualities that that brand is bringing, particular warmth or a feeling that you want to engender in that brand because of the way you behave, because the way you're perceived by decision makers, by colleagues, by employees, by how your team looks at you. To be the success that you want to be in the future, that is incredibly important. So very briefly, this is how you create and package your product. And all of these things are doable for us all the time. And because this product is changing all the time, this is not something that is, oh, I did this a while back and I don't need to do it again. No, we constantly need to be finessing, improving, fine-tuning our product and our brand and the way it's seen. Next, please.
Hi, Masood. Sorry, just a quick reminder of the time. We only have about 10 minutes left so that we can have some time for Q&A after your presentation.
Okay, I'll go quicker. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we want to see, okay, we have our product. What's the location? What's the place that this is best done within your company in terms of sector, within the type of job, within the type of location, but also if you are looking as an individual at different sectors, different companies, you look at that. So you need to be focused on the key marketplaces. It is best not to do a machine gun effect, if you like. Also, this is the reason people say that you need more than one CV, because even though the facts within the CV will be the same, for different jobs, for different markets, for different locations, you may very well want to fine-tune the examples that you use, the proof points you use, and emphasize the things that are more important. So what place you want to project your product to. Next, please. And then, okay, before I have a conversation with anyone about how I place my product into that particular market, what's the price that I am prepared to pay to get that particular opportunity? And what's the price I need to be given in order to ensure that it's the right job for me? Again, all of these things can be prepared in advance. It's best is prepared in advance so that you know what you're dealing with before you go into that situation. It's also best to have these ready in the way that you promote yourself, in the way we talk about in a minute, because it's best not to have people reject it. So to come back and say, here's an opportunity, and you to say no, that closes that particular avenue for opportunities potentially forever. So again, being very clear about the pricing is really important. And I've put in here some of the examples of issues that you might have, but you may have your own. You may have your own list in terms of what are the prices that you would extract. Next, please. So finally, into promotion. I'd like to point out that these 4 Ps, and I'm sure, as Sajid says, you're very familiar with it, but they are really important sequentially. You can't go out and promote yourself if your product isn't right, if you're not clear what place you want to project to and what the needs of that place are, and if you haven't created a clear pricing position. But once you've done that, okay, now I can project this product and brand to that place with the right pricing at the right time. That requires market intelligence. That requires you to know that the opportunity might be coming up in the future, that there is a need in that place, that they haven't crystallized into jobs. Now, as HR individuals, we know that not all the jobs are advertised. This is how we find out there's a particular position and who we know that in that position and how we can get access to that opportunity. This is really, really important, and your support network is the key in giving you that market intelligence. In terms of young graduates, different people with different ages, different experience, these principles are true for all of us. So my product, I have more examples. That's definitely true. I have more proof points. I might have had many more sector experiences, therefore have more opportunities. But irrespective of how young the graduate might be, it is really, really important that they start with this particular format so that they can get the best, because even then, the degree they did, the experience they had, where they've been, what they've done, they have to make the most of the little that they have. So it's even more important that they are using these kinds of capability. Now, in the new world, is exactly the same as choosing property. They say in selecting property, there are only 3 rules: location, location, location. In creating a successful career plan, network, network, network. It is incredibly important to network. Some people don't like it. Some people aren't good at it. I'm sorry, but this is our new reality. And the way we network is not the same. It's not just meeting people face to face anymore. There's a lot more online. There's a lot more things like LinkedIn and other communities where you may create networking opportunities. Network also is about not just the size of that network, but the quality of that network. How many decision makers are there? How many people with access to views about the market, about opportunities? And we need to keep that network warm. That's a particular skill in itself, so that when you message someone, they reply to you because they recognize you. How do you keep that warm? Creating visibility of your brand in that network and grow it. Where do you grow it? You grow it towards the places where you want to move your career in the future. So sectors, departments, functions, particular jobs, locations, whatever it might be. The network has to give you access to those opportunities. So this is all about engineering your network so that it feeds your purpose. And what is that purpose? To project your product and brand. And you do that through launching it, creating awareness for it, making sure they see the value you have, whatever it might be, and then creating a unique selling proposition, differentiating yourself from the masses in that market. And that unique pitch to that market needs to be so ready, because we all know that opportunities don't come up that often. And every time that opportunity comes up, you want to be best placed to take use of it. So imagine you meet the CEO in the elevator. They say, hello, who are you? What's going on? You want to have something really memorable and something really clear to say. I'm so-and-so, this is what I do, this is where I'm going, and this is the examples of how I've done those things. And those pitch is incredibly important. What that means is that we can't be going at every direction. You have to prioritize. You have to prioritize the places that you want to go and what has the best return for your time and for your energy and for your resources. Again and again, I'll say your support team is absolutely key. It is really, really important that you have the right people to give you visibility, to give you the right insights, to tell you the truth, and to open doors for you. And some of those who are influential will become key promoters for you. It is always best for someone else to say nice things about you than you say them about yourself. Someone else to recommend you, then you go and recommend yourself. So who are those key promoters that are gatekeepers to the decision makers? Identifying them, listing them. All of this thing is about planning, because there will be changes. Those plans will need to be adjusted, changed. But again, as a great army officer, General Montgomery once said, going into battle, I find all plans are useless, but planning was invaluable. And career management is about preparation and then quality execution. So thank you very much. Can I have the next slide, please? Just the final points to remember. First of all, these 4 Ps that we talked about and this whole plan is not a one-off. This is a plan for life, even on to retirement. What kind of retirement I want to have? What kind of relationships I want to keep? What kind of projects I might want to do? Really important. This is your plan, or the team that you are supporting, their plan for life. Because in it, you're building your family, your children, your parents, your community, because that's around how I want to manage my time, how I want to put my energy. Second thing is, this plan helps you be lucky. Now, lots of people think luck is like tossing a coin, completely random. Luck is not random. You can make yourself lucky. You make yourself lucky by putting yourself in luck's way. Let luck find you. If you position yourself right, you're in the right network, and people have visibility and they're getting the brand that you're projecting, they will come to you. And when they come to you, the whole power ratio is different. You know that. When someone comes to you and offers you a job, you have far better negotiating position to get what you want on the pricing, for example, than you would if you were asking for that job. So it's really important to make yourself lucky by putting yourself in luck's way through the plan. Last thing, and this has been proven through so much research, you need grit. The ones that succeed, especially in a chaotic world, are the ones that make multiple attempts and continue to improve every time that they have a mistake or a failure. There is no mistake or failure, there is only learning. And they continuously try. So perseverance, not giving up or anything, thick skin, bounce back, don't worry, next time, I'm ready. That is the critical ingredient for success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Masood, for that very informative presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was very much thought-provoking. So thank you very much. I want to move on to the Q&A because I want to give everyone the chance to ask their questions. But if I just may summarize everything, the key takeaways that I want everyone to take from all of this is basically, in a world where everything that is very much chaotic and uncertain, the winners, those that will be on top, are those that will have a very clear career plan or career journey. And in doing so, it's important to also bear in mind the 4 Ps: product, place, price, and promotion. And also remember that one word, which I love, which is grit. What you mentioned just now, perseverance, making sure that, you know, when you fall, you get back up again. So I would like to go to the questions. There are some already here, so I'm going to read it out. The first question, it's how can we accelerate from denial step to the top, since I knew perhaps those feelings is sometimes up and down feelings. And then the second one, you've mentioned about environmental sustainable issues on accelerated things on pandemic. We knew that environmental is part of the sustainable development goals. What would be the chamber will be booming like that? So those are the 2 questions.
Okay, the first question we touched on, it's an emotional journey. So we have to first acknowledge that emotion. And that's part of what I tried to do as an example, for example, saying we're all in it together. None of us were expecting this, and none of us know what's going on. And that whole feeling of you're not alone, we are acknowledging this is important. Second thing is information. The more information you have, the more reality that you check, the less the uncertainty. And also you break in that the 3 things that bring stress: complexity, uncertainty, and conflict. So we want to deal with those things. So in terms of complexity, the more information you have, you break it down. The more you're together, the less uncertainty feels bad, because we're all in it together. I understand, and I have this information, and I'm checking the reality. I'm getting more and more certain. And the conflict is, look, honestly, there will be options, there'll be lots of choices to make, but you know, we'll make them together, or that at the right time with the right information, you make those choices with the best information. So again, going back as HR professionals, it is incredibly important that we're out there communicating with our employees right now and making those points. Yes, we're not certain of everything that's going to happen. We are becoming more certain. Here's some more information for you. It's not maybe as bad as you think it is. Things will get better in the end. Look at the trends. For example, Angus's point about the longer term trends in energy, the longer trends in the economy in Indonesia. All of those things are incredibly important. And all of those things are things we could use to ensure that people realize it's not the end of the world and I'm not alone. That helps them go through the curve.
Okay.
Sorry, the second question was about sustainability.
Yes.
I mean, sustainability is here to stay. And Angus, I'm sure you have something to say about that in terms of the trends in general within energy sector.
Yeah, I listened to the question. I'm not sure I picked up the exact point, but could you just rephrase that or repeat it, please, Frieza?
Yes, hang on a sec. Let me read it again. You've mentioned about environment sustainable issues on accelerated things on pandemic. We knew that environment is part of the sustainable development goals. Would another sustainable development goals chamber would be booming like that?
I'm not sure I understand the last bit, but I think as Masood pointed out, this idea of ESG or CSR, corporate social responsibility, ESG, environment, social and governance. These were around. That's quite correct to point that out. And the buzzword was sustainability, and it didn't just apply to the oil and gas sector, of course, it applies to all sectors. But what we're finding is that as we come out of this pandemic is that it's really accelerated the thinking there, and there's some real social change. So I'm noticing this in the UK, for example, that people are saying, you know, we want the world, once we get through this, we want the world to be different. And so in the things that they're talking about that impact oil and gas are city pollution. It's a big media issue at the moment. For London, for example, big cities in the UK. So there's this sense that, okay, we've lived through this, we've had to make a big sacrifice economically to get through this pandemic, but now we've got through it, we want the world to be a better place. I mean, we even had, not oil and gas related, but we even had the CEO of Morgan Stanley, Matt Diamond, I think his name is, announcing that when we get through this pandemic, the world needs to be a fairer place. Now, perhaps he's playing lip service to this, we will see, but to even hear a banker even speaking in those terms would suggest, right, that there's big change on the way.
Okay.
Let's hope so.
I don't know if that answers the question. If not, ask again, please. I hope it does.
Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, so I'll probably take one more question. How do you see energy security as one of the energy trilemma in the next 10 to 20 years ahead?
So this is the idea that much of the world's population actually lives in energy poverty, or if they're not in energy poverty, much of the world demands a higher living standard. So I'm thinking of the developing countries now. And so therefore, I mean, it's interesting to make the comparison. If you look at, for example, North America or Western Europe, the energy consumption, the energy demanded is not increasing that rapidly. In fact, there's almost a decoupling or a unlinking between the general economy and energy consumption. That's on the one hand, but if you look on the other hand, developing countries, emerging markets, the demand for energy is set to increase dramatically. So we need to find a way of getting that energy to that demand, but it has to be done at a price that people can afford, of course, and also sustainably.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, I'm really sorry. There are some more questions, but unfortunately, we're already running out of time. We're 15 minutes late. But Yuli, is it okay if we stop now, or do you think we should take more questions?
Can I just say, if there are questions, by all means, send them. But I'm very happy to answer questions after the event to the community. So I'm sure Angus is the same. So I mean, we are both on LinkedIn. You can find us very easily. I think there's only one Masood Golshani, although my name's spelled here, not right here. Maybe you won't find me. but anyway, I'm happy to answer questions after this event. So no problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I think, Risa, I think we can take another one or two with a very short and sweet answer, maybe Masood and Angus.
Sure.
Okay, so let's take one or two more. The next one, based on your discussions with your clients, what has been the most interesting response from them to this double impact situation, to oil and gas situation?
Ooh, wow, that's a great question. And now I'm under pressure to answer it quickly. You know, I'll give you an example. Whether this is probably an example of a trend that was in place before the pandemic, but has been accelerated. But if you have a moment, check out a company called Lundin Energy. They're an oil and gas firm working in the North Sea, and they're doing some amazing things around energy transition. So capturing all of the carbon dioxide that they produce, using renewable energy on an oil platform to power the oil platform. So that's my short answer. Check out Lundin Energy, see what they're doing. It's really exciting stuff.
Okay. The next one, looking at your 4 Ps, do you have any suggestions for fresh grads, considering they have no experience yet and needs to learn about technical capability in a new work environment?
Yeah, definitely. Look, for a new grad, this kind of career management is even more important. I've been doing graduate recruitment and graduate schemes all my life. In every company I went to, I always took on graduates, and I always ran a graduate scheme, development scheme. And those guys, they need structure. They don't know. I mean, they don't have the network. They don't have the experience. It's really important that they're given tools to help them prepare. Also, they don't come completely out of their mother's womb. They've got experience. That they need to make that experience as valuable as they can. So it's even more important that they prepare in advance. My son has just graduated. My daughter graduated a couple of years ago. I've been doing a lot of work with young people. This kind of thing, especially the 4 Ps, are even more important for them. So they can talk about their behavior and the talent that they bring, whether it's extracurricular activities, what they did at school, what they've done in the community. They need to make the most of what little they have. Therefore, it's even more important to package it and to really focus. So for the graduate schemes, this is really, really important. I used to always have a hands-on for the graduate schemes. They were my pets normally, and my pet projects and things I wanted to get involved with. And coaching the top talent to learn how to develop themselves, how to learn how to grow themselves, how to grow their network, how to project themselves is absolutely essential.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone, who had questions. Unfortunately, I could not go through each and every one of them. So maybe we'll take it offline afterwards. Once again, I just wanted to say a very thank you very much to you, Masood, and also to Angus for what has been a very interesting and lively discussion today, and also for sharing with us the experiences that you have from your clients and your background. So once again, thank you very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give it back to Mbak Yuli, maybe for some closing remarks. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Prisa. Thank you, Angus and Masood. And Kang Andi would like to lead for the photo session. So as usual, we will take the photo ya.
Oke, rekan-rekan mungkin bisa ditampilkan wajah-wajah ganteng dan cantiknya sebelum buka puasa. Bisa diaktifkan, boleh rekan-rekan sekalian, biar juga kita saling kenal. Ada segala macam. Jo, terima kasih. Mbak Prisa sudah. Ada yang mungkin sedang rusak ininya. Oke. Baik, sama-sama. Pertama kita tersenyum dulu ya, teman-teman ya. Bareng-bareng. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay, one more with the thumbs going forward. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you very much for all participants and for the panelists, Angus and Masood. It's really a pleasure to hosting event with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Yeah, the participants register 45, but attending here 25. Yeah, so hopefully.
And via YouTube, there are 10 participants there.
Yeah. So this is live via YouTube. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Prisa, for moderating the session. Thank you again, Angus and Masood. Hopefully we can have this session again in the future. Yeah.
Sure.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Yuli.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
Masood.
Terima kasih teman-teman semuanya.
Terima kasih yang udah hadir semuanya.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you, Mas Andi.
Bye-bye.
Terima kasih. Hey, Virus. Thank you, Kang Virus. Abi, Osi, terima kasih banyak.
Thank you, Angus.
Selamat berbuka semuanya. Bye-bye.
Ya,
Thank you, Kang Andi.
Bye, Juli. Kang Andi. Terima kasih ya, makasih. Mila, makasih Mila. Ya, thank you Heru. Lain kali lu yang ngomong, Ro. Thank you semuanya.
Oke, Ndi, thank you Ndi ya.
Thank you Kang Firus. Thank you ya Kang. Nuhun,
Ya,
hatur nuhun pisan. Sip.
yuk. Malam Ndi.
Yuk.